Welcome back to LaNtErN Insights. Today we're playing the mono blue LaNtErN list that I did a video on over the weekend. You can check out that video here. I've made a few minor changes to it. If it comes up, we'll talk about them, but just kind of updating it for the current meta. This hand here I think is an easy mulligan. The two preordains are useful, but Teleria West entering tapped I think just really slows the hand down a lot. And this hand is much better. Like, it's slow, but it has more things to do, I think. So we'll take that. And they're going to lead on Forest Hardened Scales, so obviously playing Hardened Scales here. And here I like to name Inkmoth Nexus. I think you can go a lot of different directions with what you want to name, but I think it's the one that can kind of kill us the fastest. And with Bridge, Saga, and Whir in hand, I'm not too concerned about long game finding answers, but Inkmoth, them having like a turn 3 Inkmoth kill, I wouldn't love. They don't end up having Inkmoth in hand, but still something to name here. We draw a Shadow Spear, which is just a 1-up in the deck, not super useful. And we actually could have played it there. I haven't played with Metallic Rebuke in a while, so kind of forgot how it worked, but we should have played Shadow Spear there. We didn't need it because we just needed to hold up one island for Metallic Rebuke. And we are going to counter this Patchwork. Obviously, I think our next couple turns are fairly like Bridge, where we don't have a ton going on, like to leave up mana for Counterspell. Like we want to cast everything in our hand, so I just want to get the Rebuke out of hand so that it doesn't get stuck under Bridge. Because this is a matchup where they do play a lot of 1-power creatures with Arcbound Ravager, which are very good against like just holding one counterspell in hand. And they just run out a Springleaf Drum here, so they obviously don't have a ton going on either. And here we are just going to make constructs. I think with the Shadow Spear, we can put pressure on us, and if all they're doing is making constructs, we can make bigger ones. But here we're just going to float mana. One construct is enough for pressure, and with Preordain, we have enough stuff that we're comfortable with just playing the cards in our hand instead of going for extra beatdown. I think that's a bit of a safer route. And we grab a Needle on Haywire Might. Because they have Saga, I think it's reasonable that they could have one in the deck. It's by no means guaranteed, and I don't think it would be terribly incorrect to just grab a LaNtErN planning on getting Shredder off Whir of Invention. But either way, I think because they have the Saga, I think they could have Haywire Might. We don't know yet. So I'm going to run out the Shadow Spear, gain a bit of life. Preordain, sorry, I don't think, skipped through it a bit quickly. We put, I think, a land to the bottom and left Codex Shredder on top in order to be able to cast Codex Shredder and Whir of Invention. And they go ahead and make constructs here. There's a Boss, Stirrings. They do find a Boseiju off their Stirrings, which is something you will have to worry about. One thing, I did a few games with this mono blue just to practice, and one thing I did found was that there are often times where you kind of can get very nervous about what your opponent has in hand. But they use Boseiju on the Shadow Spear, which obviously is very good for us. We get this extra land, meaning we're going to be able to go Bridge into Shredder, and it gets the Boseiju out of their hand. It's not very likely that they're playing too many of them, so I think it's very good that they used it on Shadow Spear. So we're just going to follow through on that plan, play Bridge, play Shredder, and then we'll be able to Whir of Invention for LaNtErN next turn and be in pretty good shape. Usually they don't play too many Boseijus. There's maybe 1 or 2 more that we have to worry about, and then beyond that, it's just keeping them off Walking Ballista. So I see land and Bridge, and I like to bottom both. We don't really need either of them at this point in time. Bridge, they have no cards in hand, so we are just going to get a LaNtErN here. We're kind of looking for another Mill Rock would be our best bet. But we are going to Whir for LaNtErN here, and game 1, this is basically locked up. I'll go through it. Actually, I'll slow it down because we cast Surgical here. So we surgical the Urza Saga because I think it's likely they play more Urza Saga than Boseiju, and with the full lock and no cards in hand, I'd rather just minimize the number of cards that they have access to. If we take a look at their deck list here, we do see that there weren't any Haywire Mites main, just the one Boseiju, and then basically Walking Ballista and Ancient Stirrings are all we have to keep them off of for the rest of the game. And then they do have Horizon Canopy, and Ozolith can draw cards for them at instant speed, but that's basically it for the rest of game one. Here it's basically locked up. Like there's not really much they can do. I'll go through it quickly. Like we're just gonna play Saga, make constructs, and they do play it out here, but that's totally fine. So we get game one. The counterspell. I mean, Rebuke wasn't amazing. It was very similar to a Thoughtseize, I think. Like if we were playing a Thoughtseize, we would have taken one card from their hand. They didn't really have too many threats anyway, so it was all right. wasn't terrible. The list felt good in this game. But let's get into sideboarding in game two. In terms of sideboarding, kind of the key cards I'm bringing in are a Welding Jar and a Pithing Needle. And then I brought in an extra copy of Emery and a Ratchet Bomb. It can be good getting it up to 2 or on 0. Obviously not 1 or 3. But they do run a good number of 2-drops. And if they're planning on construct tokens or something like Hangerback Walker producing a lot of 1/1 flyers, we can clean them up with Ratchet Bomb. In terms of what we're taking out, Shadow Spear, I don't think it's very realistic that we'll be making bigger constructs than them. Soul Guide LaNtErN, they don't really use their graveyard much. Surgical can be fine, but they don't really have kind of one card that we absolutely need to keep them off of. And Crucible of Worlds, just because I think we're likely finished our game before we start looping lands. Let's get into game two. This hand here I think is pretty good against scales. We have a Needle, Welding Jar to protect bridge, and we can get that turn 3 bridge, so I think it's an easy keep here. Urza Saga can find either LaNtErN or Shredder depending on what we need. Unfortunately they do have a turn 1 Pithing Needle naming Codex Shredder. This isn't an auto lose for us. It's going to make the game much more difficult, but our path to winning here is just using Ghoul Color's Bell and then using Academy Ruins so that we never mill out. But that is kind of our only way here. In this list, the only way of beating a Resolved Needle is Odawara. So you kind of have to like bounce it with Odawara and then have a counterspell right then. We're just going to run out Pithing Needle. And importantly here, name Haywire Mite, which I think they didn't have any main, but it's very, very likely that they have some side. And you could also name Boseiju or Inkmoth or Walking Ballista. I think the reason not to name Boseiju is that we have Welding Jar and Double Bridge, so we're not too concerned about it. And Mites are the only cards that can get through Welding Jar. Ballista is going to be bad, yes, but they led on Pithing Needle, which means if anything, it's not going to be super fast. Their game here, so we should be in all right shape. But I think that Needle on Haywire Mite over Boseiju, as you'll see, was very important in this game. And they just run out as a pause. Obviously, it's a much slower start from them, suggesting they have some form of interaction in their hand. Probably the worst thing that they could have here is Force of Vigor, but if they have it, they have it. We like to draw this Whir of Invention off of Preordain, just helping us find kind of the missing half of LaNtErN Ghoul Color spell that we get with Saga. So here they just run out a Patchwork Automaton, fairly slow clock from them, definitely giving us a lot of time to set up, but we are going to have to be aware of that interaction. And we draw a second Saga. Obviously we sort of need a third blue source for Whir of Invention, but another Saga is not terrible. That the third chapter is really all we care about this game, so it's going to take a little bit. And they do run out a Haywire Mite, which they have likely had in hand for a while. And now they start getting in. Fortunately, Patchwork is going to grow big enough that it's not going to be able to attack anymore, and they're just going to be chipping in with like 1-power creatures. In this situation, I think it's you don't have to really rush to empty your hand unless they have an Arcbound Ravager. So I think it, if they have an Arcbound Ravager, if you've seen an Arcbound Ravager on top, then getting Cookbook here isn't unreasonable. But as it is, I think we grab Ballista. The only reason they cast Zabaz when they already had one in order to make everything bigger, I think, is if they have Ballista and they need to get up to 15 counters. I don't think there's really any other reason to cast Zabaz, because I'm just going to be able to get my hand under, and so making their creatures bigger doesn't help them. In fact, it actively hurts their game plan if they don't have Ballista in hand, which is why I grabbed that needle on Ballista. And here we do run out the Saga, so it's going to be 2 more turns until we have the full lock, although our full lock this game is only 1 mill rock, so that's not quite ideal. And here, yeah, so they're able to swing for 3. After next turn, it's going to be down to just 2 a turn, and we aren't super concerned with this clock. We draw Teleria West, not super useful here, but not the worst card in the world. And we do see that they have a Boseiju on top. Again, we're not too concerned with it because we only have 1 mill rock, and it's not worth sacrificing LaNtErN here. We have the Welding Jar. Not likely that their last card is a second Boseiju, and so we go for, we just let them have it. We'll use the Welding Jar to save whatever they try to blow up, and that'll also get us an extra land, which will let us do a bit more with Teleria West this next turn. So they do end up holding the Ballista for a while, and I mean, from here it's just kind of remember that they have Ballista, like not Ballista, that they have Boseiju. So it doesn't show up in their revealed cards anywhere, which is kind of annoying, but not too much you can do. We end up just using the Teleria West to grab an island. I guess we could have played it, grabbed Saga next turn or something, but I want to have my hand as low as possible, so it was basically just an expensive way of dumping cards. I'm not totally sold on this Teleria West yet, but it's an interesting card for sure. Importantly, they did draw an Arcbound Ravager, so we are going to have to either counter it or find a way of discarding it, as it's the one card that allows them to attack through a bridge if we have 1 card in hand. It's kind of the card that we're most scared about in this counterspell version. So we are just going to counter it here. If we don't counter this, we just lose next turn, which obviously we don't want to do that. And so we are going to mill Urza Saga. We do have to kind of time our mills well because we only have 1 Ghoul Color spell. It is going to be important, our timing of when we sequence our mill effects, and we'll likely use the Expedition map at their end step here. And they go for Boseiju on the Walking Ballista, which does likely mean that their last card is Ballista. So we were correct to name it when we did. Obviously, if they were able to blow up the Pithing Needle, then they'd probably kill us. As we're only at 8, they'd be able to move everything over. It would be lethal if we didn't have that needle. We do see we're drawing a Metallic Rebuke. Obviously, from here it's going to be a bit like we'd use Expedition map, get Shredder or get Urza Saga or Odawara to bounce Codex Shredder, but it's not like an amazing spot. Actually, we'd probably get map for Academy Ruins and just start putting Welding Jars back on top. From here, the game, like this is a win. We're just likely going to mill them. They don't have a ton of answers, and not a lot of ways of drawing cards. So it would just be a slow grindy win, but we would eventually get there. Anyway, my thoughts on the deck overall, I think it felt good. I'll keep playing a bit more of it, probably share some more videos with it, because I think it's a cool list. It was a bit, like the counter spells were okay. There were a few moments where, I would have liked it to just be a discard spell, just to have that added layer of ensuring that I know what's in their hand. So is a bit of uncertainty with it, but I think oftentimes in Modern you can kind of predict what your opponent has in hand based on their play patterns, such as what we did with this walking ballista, where it was very clear that they have it in hand, and so we're able to kind of play around it in that way. Anyway, that's Mono Blue Lantern. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.